Welcome to Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Hudsonite publisher and editor Michael Foley. And on this segment, I have Paul Berning here, who's running for state assembly in the 30th district. Welcome, Paul.
Thanks for having me on.
So I'm not sure if everybody in the district knows who you are, so we'll use this segment as sort of an introduction to help people get to know you and let people know why they should vote for you.
Great.
So tell us a little bit about your background. You're starting with your childhood. You grew up in River Falls.
Well, I was born in New Richmond.
Born in New Richmond.
Yep. So my mom and dad are from New Richmond. We moved to River Falls in 1989. Went to a private school there called Good Shepherd Christian Academy. I was in their very first kindergarten class. It's kind of a cute little connotation to my life that I have. But we moved there in 1989 mostly because of my parents driving to and from New Richmond. It was a bit spendy, even with 90-cent gasoline back then, to bring a kid 20 some miles to a private school that they chose to put me in. So we moved to River Falls in '89. I graduated from Good Shepherd in 1999 and attended UWRF that fall. Went there for a semester. Decided to go into the workforce after that and figure life out that way. And in the meantime, my senior year, I had met the love of my life, my wife Brianne, who is an absolutely, I can never say enough great things about who she is and what she is and what she means to me as a person. I met her in 1999 while working here in Hudson at McDonald's my senior year in high school. So we met, and of course, as with anything, you don't fall in love right away, but certainly have fallen more and more in love with her over time, and I can't say enough great things about her. So we were together during that time. She graduated from UWRF with a bachelor's degree in social work. We got married October of 2004. I'm glad I could remember that, right?
Okay, yeah, you'd be in trouble if you can't remember that.
No, I'll never forget that day because it was a beautiful day and she looked absolutely beautiful. But anyway, we got married in October of 2004, and in 2005 we moved to Baldwin, Wisconsin. In between graduating high school, attending a little bit of college, I did go back to UWRF for a semester to take some general studies, and after that we got married, like I said, in 2004. But in 2003, I then decided instead of attending school, I would go to work for the company that I'm with now, Ozark National Life Insurance and NIS Financial Services, which is a broker-dealer.
So you started in New Richmond, you went to River Falls,
you
went to Baldwin, and you're now in Hudson.
Well, not to mention a short stint in middle school that my parents moved us to Russia for a few months to help rebuild a church, and so I got some interesting cultural experience there that helped me appreciate this great area that we live in.
Here, I was just going to say that you've been in St. Croix County or Pierce County your entire existence, and now you get a little sense of flavor of some of the international experience you have in your life.
Yeah. So yeah, I actually have been to Russia twice. Once in 7th grade. We went on it was around a 2-week trip over there just to, talk about God and Christ and the Bible, and you could call it a mission trip right after the...
Was that about the same time that the New Richmond Marching Band was out there?
That I'm not sure. I couldn't tell you. Possibly. It was right after, it was like 1991.
Okay.
1992, somewhere in there, and we went over there, and my mom and dad felt a calling to go back. And so we did when I was in 8th grade for several months, 2 or 3 months, somewhere in there. And then for some reason, we didn't make it back there again, but I didn't, my parents did. But anyway, it was a great experience over there, and I can, again, tell you the appreciativeness that I have for this area and this country in particular. There's really not very many places like this where we live. So.
Okay. We talked a little bit about entering the workforce,
and
you went to college for a semester or two. But what got you from, I should say, what got you from McDonald's to where you're at now, which is an insurance rep?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I learned working in fast food. What an amazing opportunity to learn the workforce, and I tell you what, just seeing the diverse people that work in that environment, it really helps make who you are. I also worked at Walmart too a little bit, so I worked a little retail and a little hospitality in McDonald's, and you really get to see how to serve people and cater to their needs. And so with that, I took the tools that I learned from that and being in student leadership in high school, and went out to an Ozark seminar and learned about what they do and how they help people with very unique products. And I was just intrigued at 22 years old by the process. So I left where I was working and went full-time into selling life insurance and investments at 22 years old.
And we should say that Ozark is the name of the company you work at? What's the full name of the?
Ozark National Life Insurance Company. Okay. And NIS Financial
So people
Services.
don't think you're headed off to the Ozark Mountains or something.
Nope, they're based out of Kansas City, Missouri. And the owner and founder is a very, very giving person. He took a ton of his own money and built a community to help people. So I admire working for someone like that that's willing to take what he's earned and turn it into an opportunity to help people with drug and alcohol problems and stuff like that. So yeah, I got into the workforce, an actual career path in 2003. In 2006, I resigned from Ozark. There were circumstances around that, nothing really bad. I felt like my life was going in a different path than that. Started working at a warehouse, intended to go back to school, and then we found out that we were pregnant again with our second child at this point.
Sure.
And so my wife says, well, you should probably get back into sales and make some money, right? So I'm like, all right, I'll do that. So rather than putting my now new young family, because now my kids are 14 and a half months apart, I decided to go back into sales and ended up working for a telecommunications company out of Eagan, Minnesota. I learned a lot, got to be on not the bleeding edge, but the cutting edge of some telecommunications technologies that had faltered about 5 to 6 years prior, and they relaunched a great product. And I put myself at the front of the pack and just did that type of product. It was a hosted voice over IP solution.
Okay.
We could get into details if you want.
I know what that is, but I'm not sure everybody else knows.
So
voice
over IP. Some people think of it as a 4-letter word. It's not. It's voice over internet protocol, which is simply a language to transport your voice from one device to another device.
Basically, just internet over the telephone, right?
Not telephone over the internet per se.
Telephone over the internet.
Well, yeah. Voice over internet protocol is a language, so it's a code. Internet can be a transport for it,
right?
But that's not necessarily how it's always delivered. It can be delivered over data.
Okay.
I could get into the nuances of it. I don't know if that's important for this.
I think you just blew everyone's minds right now.
Well, let's just say I entered that arena, and in 2000, that was in 2008. In 2010, my intention was to go back to Ozark because that was my first passion.
Okay.
And
what is it that you really like about Ozark?
The founder and CEO, and the guy that I worked for previously, who I still report to today, who manages Wisconsin. His name is Steve Bowl, and hope he doesn't mind that I'm mentioning his name. But what a wonderful man that I work for directly, and also just a great man that I work for overall. In Charlie Sharp, the founder and CEO of Ozark.
Okay. And what are some of the big challenges you guys face?
Within Ozark and
or
NIS?
you personally, with your job,
Prospecting, as always. It's not easy for someone to pick up the phone and hear 50 people say no before they say, yeah, come in and talk to us about life insurance and investments. I mean, what a morbid thing to talk about sometimes when it's, hey, we got a plan for when you die.
Sure.
That's not always a great topic, but I try to make it fun and invigorating for my clients to experience. And so, yeah.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about why you're running for office. You're running as a Republican for State
Yes.
Assembly to take over for Dean Knutson, former mayor here in Hudson.
Yep.
When he'll be stepping down. This will be at the end of this term. So the election is coming up in November, and there will be a primary if there are enough candidates for primary. So why are you running, and why is this the time for you?
That's a very fair question, and I've actually gotten that question a lot lately. So I appreciate.
I hope
you.
so. You're running for office.
Yeah,
People
right.
want to know why.
People want to know who I am, and then the next thing is, well, why in the heck are you running, Paul? Right. So it's been in my heart to be a servant of the people for a very long time. I remember distinctly back in the Bush Clinton, the original Bush Clinton matchup. Back in the early 90s, 92. And I remember watching that process and being extremely intrigued by it at a young age, 11 years old, watching this process and then seeing things like Ross Perot go in there too, and my parents saying that this is just, it's craziness going on, right? And so I was intrigued by it, and I started digging into more and more of it. My social studies teacher, I'd sit at his desk at lunch, and we would talk what's going on in the country, what's going on locally, and we'd talk about Sheila, and we'd talk about Kitty Rhodes over time, and some of these other people, and so it's always intrigued me to be a servant for my area. What got me, as I've evolved in my maturity over time, right? I have really seen some drastic changes over the last 20 years since I've been watching this process. And the reason I'm entering the race is I feel very, very much so that I can be an effective leader and a great representative for our beautiful area. The fact that I am from this area, not necessarily Hudson specifically, but from the St. Croix Valley, and my wife has grown up in St. Croix County. I feel like I would be a great candidate to represent Hudson, River Falls, and Roberts, that specific area. So.
Great. And I know during your campaign launch speech, you mentioned the new economy.
Yes.
Trying to maybe remake the Western Wisconsin economy to look more like Silicon Valley with some more tech companies instead of just hardcore manufacturing everywhere, which is seems to be what Scott Walker really was beating the drum on over his, that's what he was really trying to push. So maybe explain to folks for us, what exactly is this new economy that you talk about, and why is that the way to go?
So let's start with talking about what the new economy is, and then my vision. You explained it just a little bit differently than how I actually see it. So we'll talk about that, and I'm glad you brought that up. The new economy, simply put, is the world's largest taxi service. It's an app, right? It's on that device now that you can also talk on occasionally, not just send a text or grab an Uber cab or buy something on Amazon. That smart device is very powerful. Now, every single app that's on there, every website that you go to, right, they need a place to headquarter the support staff for that particular application or software application. They need a server cluster to house what you're accessing. All these things require jobs, and good paying, very skilled jobs. The free apps that you get, they're not free. Somebody pays for them in the form of advertising or investors. Much like Facebook, if you remember Facebook when it originally came out, I got Facebook just simply so I could keep in contact with my younger brother who was stationed as a Marine over in Japan. And I was talking to him, and he goes, well, you really should try this thing called Facebook. I'm like, all right, whatever, right? So I tried it, and the next thing you know, I've hundreds of friends all over the globe, and you can keep in touch with people. So this new economy, it requires people to run it. requires programmers to constantly update security settings, to constantly, so that's the new economy. It's
Okay.
Uber, it's Airbnb, it's Amazon, it's places like that.
Okay.
Oh, and then
why?
can I go into you said about manufacturing and the new economy.
Right.
I don't want to transform what we have here. What I want to do is supplement what we have here.
Okay.
What we have here is very low unemployment right now. The only thing we can do is try to make that better. And I think this is a means in which we can accomplish that, is creating a fertile environment here in western Wisconsin where we have fiber. We have fiber. I've seen fiber maps of fiber available, fiber access to the internet around this area. We can build data centers with that. We can build tech companies here. They can bring it here. And so no, I'm not looking to transform what we have entirely. I'm looking to supplement it and enhance it.
No, and it sounds like you're trying to infuse a little bit of Silicon Valley into western Wisconsin. But I feel like maybe that's what every city wants to do. That's what every legislator wants to bring jobs, especially and recreate Silicon Valley in their neck of the woods. What can western Wisconsin offer places that Austin, Texas can't, and San Francisco can't, and Boston, and all these other metropolitan areas that might be attractive for young people and young programmers to go and work and live?
Yep. So western Wisconsin is first of all, beautiful place to live, right? I mean, there's a reason why I haven't chosen to go to Indiana or Florida or Boston. It's a really wonderful place to live, raise a family, great neighbors, for the most part. It's just a really great environment. Also, we are not too far away from a metropolitan type area, but you don't have to have the hustle and bustle of a big city to get the big city amenities. You've got a beautiful community like Hudson, or a great city like River Falls, or a great place like Roberts that people can reside in and get to work in the cities if they so choose. But you've got that ability to access what St. Paul and Minneapolis have to offer with the Timberwolves and the Twins and other venues, Xcel Energy Center, without being too far away. So, yeah, it's attractive. It's attractive in many means. Do we have no income tax like Austin, Texas? Well, sorry, no.
Right.
We don't. However, you get what you pay for sometimes, right? Quality doesn't necessarily mean more money, but more money doesn't necessarily make a better product. So, with that being said, I think we've got a great balance in this area to attract existing companies to relocate, companies to build a branch in this area or open a second location potentially, and new companies that are up and coming, like some friends of mine that I know have started a couple of technology companies here, and I don't know if they want me to mention them, but yeah, so we have a good environment for them. And the fact that I'll be helping pitch them, I have confidence in myself that I can help convince companies to come here and be a Wisconsin company.
All right. One of the other things that I heard you mention during your launch speech, your campaign launch speech, was kind of bringing people together after a divisive period in our politics here in the state. Of course, the recall elections, and they had a lot of folks riled up against each other, a lot of angry teachers, and a lot of people angry about recalls happening at all. How are you? I mean, what's your plan to bring people together, and why should they trust you to do that?
So you bring up a very key point, and something that we talk about a lot in our family still is what happened here in the last few years. You've hit on some very key descriptors here, some adjectives like angry, right?
Right.
That's something I want to help alleviate. My wife and I, before we got married, we we took a vow even before we got married, right? So we took a vow when we got married, and then we took a vow before we got married. And we promised each other that we would use 2 key ingredients in our lives going forward, and we strive very hard to hit them. And those 2 key ingredients are respectful communication and empathy. I think we do a pretty darn good example of that, and I think as a leader in this community and in this area, I plan on continuing that type of credo into this arena as well. I plan on being having respectful communication with people and using empathy instead of sympathy to help create solutions. So that's what I can tell people in how is Paul Berning going to fix all of that. I'm not going to fix it. It's up to the individual, but I certainly hope to be an example to those around me and show that we can accomplish things through those 2 mediums.
Okay. And you are running as a Republican. Mm-hmm. Why would somebody who's maybe leaning a little bit the other way, a little more left-leaning, why would somebody like that want to vote for you? And can they trust you to not be lockstep with the party that's already in control?
Well, the nice thing is the party doesn't set policy for us to run. The Republican Party is, I look at it as a place that we can go and hang out and talk ideas. But at the end of the day, I'm a human being just like you. I'm a neighbor. I'm a friend. I'm a coworker. So at the end of the day, if I keep those 2 ingredients that I talked about just a few minutes ago, that's a good reason why somebody would want to vote for me that isn't necessarily always voting as a Republican.
Now that we got everybody thinking all warm, fuzzy feelings, let's get into some terrible, divisive topics like some of these wedge issues. Where do you stand on something controversial like voter ID?
Voter ID. So I am proponent of it. So I believe that it's a good way to thwart potential voter fraud. I can't bring up specific cases of voter fraud that have happened, but you hear murmurings and you hear grumblings and you hear people say, oh, well, this is rigged or this is fixed. Well, this is a nice way for someone to go, hey, this is me. Check out the picture. Yep. Okay. So, that's how I feel on it.
Okay, and you don't think it disenfranchises folks?
Well, I guess I would ask, the question I would ask back is, how does it disenfranchise folks? I'm fairly certain that people are allowed a free state ID if they can't get a driver's license. And so that is an acceptable form of identification. I don't see it as disenfranchising people, but
all right.
If there's people that think that.
Let's move on to another tough one.
Okay.
Education funding, especially, not too long ago, we talked about at the state level problems with university funding or big cuts to university system funding. At the same time, while there were, money going toward a Milwaukee Bucks arena. And that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Where do you stand on something like that and education funding in general?
As far as like the Buck Stadium is concerned?
Well, that and just funding of the university system, what levels it should be at, as well as local education.
Yep. So as far as that's concerned, my first and foremost priority is always to the taxpayer. And so I'll speak to both of the little subjects that you spoke about. The Buck Stadium, not a fan. I thought that was a very, very poor choice for use of taxpayer dollars. And as far as college education is concerned, or even high school and our K through 12 education is concerned, it's very important to have those in place so that somebody who can't afford private school tuition, but I believe wholeheartedly in our public education system. Are there things that could change? Probably. And that's why we plan on having sounding board sessions all across the district so teachers can weigh in on how we can make this effective. Again, just because you throw money at something doesn't make it a valuable product, and just because something doesn't have a lot of money doesn't mean that it can't be a valuable resource. So we've got great people in place, and I think if we can get them involved and and find some ways to also bring in the new economy into play with it, I think we'll be a go-to.
Sure. What about something like state control versus local control? You see a lot of fights between local governments, county governments, and what they sometimes see as overreaches from, or power grabs from state government.
Okay.
And state government also has to, make sure there's level playing fields, and there's a variety of reasons why things need to be done at a state level, especially with DNR and deer populations and various things.
State parks.
And you're running for state office.
Yep.
So where do you come down on state control versus local control, and how and where are some of the lines?
Okay, so you're asking a very, very, very good question, and it's a question I think that for maybe a different time, for time's sake, we could get into
Too complicated for a moment.
Well,
time we have.
Here's the bottom line: is I'm a firm believer in civil liberties, and I'm a firm believer in the fact that you need to make decisions for yourself. And when it comes down to it, when is it too much? Well, when the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing.
Okay.
At what point is that, and where right now? We could spend a long time on that, but I think for right now, I'm going to leave it at with local control. You have a lot easier access to your mayor or your city councilman than you do our Congress people and our senators up in Washington, D.C. So where that falls in between, we need to figure out where it falls in the Constitution in D.C., what's their role. And then with Madison, we need to figure out if it's appropriate and if it's trumping on the local municipalities and county level authority.
Okay. Where do you fall on transportation funding? We've got a big bridge project happening right here, just north of Hudson. We've got I-94 coming through. We've got all kinds of infrastructure needs, aging infrastructure issues. Things need to be replaced, and new things need to be built, as you talked about, to help spur about this new economy.
Yeah.
So maybe explain your approach to transportation funding and infrastructure in general.
So yeah, transportation, as far as the interstate level is concerned, of course, Washington says, here's what you got to do, and rightfully so. That's their baby, and we have to take care of it because our residents use it. As far as state funding, the counties have certain levels that they levy local residents for maintenance issues on that, and same with the cities. As of right now, Hudson's doing a pretty good job of maintaining steady growth. And as someone going to Madison, I really don't see a whole lot of needing to meddle with what the city or the county's doing. I just really don't, and I think the residents would have a far better ability to reach their county people and their city people and say, hey, this needs to get fixed than, the state highway or the federal highway. Sure. Transportation. As far as the new bridge is concerned, I think it's absolutely awesome that we have that going in. I don't know so much if downtown Stillwater likes it, but at the same time, that's been something that's been a long time in the works. And it just gives us another artery to attract people to this area and another means to say, hey, you've got easy access across the river to some venues that maybe aren't necessarily available here, pro-level sports teams, stuff like that. Mall of America.
Sure.
So.
What criminal justice issues are on your radar? Heroin is a big issue here in this part of the state, especially in Hudson, with what's gone on here with some deaths of young people. There's prisons that are being overcrowded. Lots of synthetic marijuana issues. Sheila wrote some bills that turned into laws on that issue. What are some things that have your attention in that arena?
Well, as far as the heroin problem, let's talk a little bit about that. I think it's a terrible thing that people get hooked on that and have to use that. The fundamental issue is not whether or not these people are criminals, really. Heroin users using heroin, not because they're a bad person necessarily. They use heroin because there's something void in their life. And to criminalize a heroin user, I think that that thwarts any type of progress we can make as a human being for them, and we need to get to the core issue on that. As far as people that distribute it, with it being illegal at this point to distribute, I think they need to be found and prosecuted at the highest extent of the law possible. That's the bottom line on that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do see heroin dealing or drug dealing as a criminal justice issue, but drug using more as a public health issue. What other public health concerns do you have on your mind? People talk. It was in the news a lot last year about immunizations.
Yes, it was.
We've got people all freaked out about the Zika virus and Ebola and lots of hysteria on those sorts of things. What are your public health issues?
What are the things that I'm touching on? Well, the bottom line is we've got a lot of publicly funded type of programs like schools and that. I would rather really not talk about immunizations too much right now. I've got some things we'll unveil as time goes on. But immunizations, there's a lot of controversy with them. And I think we need to continue to look at that and see what's good and what's bad, and how as a public health, if there's a public health crisis about something, how do we handle that from a government point of view? We'll reveal some more on that later, but you don't see polio that much anymore.
Sure.
So I'll just kind of leave it at that.
All right. Any other issues that we didn't touch on that are top of mind for you in your campaign?
No, but can we go into where they can reach me and how they can find me?
Yeah, well, we'll talk about what's your overall campaign approach. How are you going to be hitting where can people find you at events, and how are you going to be reaching out to the community?
I first of all, I try to take my cloaking device off as much as possible and be as many places as I can without sacrificing too much time with my family. So you can find me a lot in Hudson, River Falls, networking groups, networking events, places like that. As far as the campaign approach is concerned, we're going to be doing a lot of social media. You'll see a lot of vlogs coming out. We can find us on there if you want me to say that now. www.paulwberning.com is a place you can find us. You can go to Twitter at PB4Assembly. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Paul4Assembly. So Paul 4 Assembly.
Okay.
And go to our website, and you'll start to see more and more about that. But that's the new economy. We're going to use social media as much as possible because that's what we're trying to bring here, and we're trying to create a model for that.
Okay. And we've got still several months until the election is upon us, so I'm sure people will see you and your issues in front of them at some point throughout the spring, summer, and into the fall.
I would like to say just one thing is that my number one priority is to protect the taxpayer. Without the taxpayer, we can't make policy, and we can't enforce policy if we make it. And so if we are appreciative and show that we will respect the tax dollars that are given to us as lawmakers, I think that will go a long way in creating a good environment here in Wisconsin, a happy environment to be able to accomplish what we set out to do.
Great. That's really about all the questions I had. Is there anything else I'm missing or anything else that you'd like to add?
Well, we have a potential primary coming up in August, so we're gonna need that. We're gonna need your vote. We're gonna need your support. Of course, we need your donations. You can find the ability to do that on our webpage. Other than that, no, not really. We appreciate it. We need, again, support, vote, donations, help.
Great. Well, thanks for your time. I just want to remind folks that August 9th, it looks like, is going to be the date of a primary if there's going to be other candidates on the Republican side. And the general election, I'm sure you'll hear it a million times, but it'll be November 8th, and there will be a presidential candidates also on that ballot. So I'm sure there'll be lots of votes cast. Thanks for joining me.
All right. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.